The cycle of Boro's season continues as we reverted back to type today and dropped possibly the worst performance of the whole season. And that's saying something. What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Project Boro, the series on the channel where we, of course, review and preview every single Boro game. And we'll talk about going one step forward and two steps back, because Boro went down to Swansea today and were beaten by 1-0. Beaten by a Swansea side who themselves, I'm sure they'll be open to admit, were bang average themselves in a game that was pretty poor, really, from both sides. A game littered with mistakes, a game littered with errors, scrappy play, two teams who were absolutely miles off it. But despite Swansea being way off it and way under par throughout this game, Boro managed to somehow find themselves being even worse by some distance. This was like going back in the time machine to 2 weeks ago when Boro were dropping absolutely shambolic performances against Bristol City, Watford, in games where we were just so inept, so lethargic, so poor in possession, lacking any sort of energy or any creativity, really. It was like going backwards 3 games ago, and it does feel like the 2 games we've just had, being the victories that they were, have only masked over the true cracks, really, that have been plaguing Boro for a long time now, because how can a team come out of such a spell as bad as that, show signs of life in the 2 games we've just had, and then revert back to being so bad in a game like this? It really was not a bump back down to earth, because I think we were all still extremely cautious. I mean, we've been here how many times this season with Boro having a slight mini upturn before crashing straight back down to earth and reverting back to type, and that's exactly what happened here. It was a stark reminder that as good as this Boro team can be, or maybe as bad as the opposition has been recently, Boro themselves are still miles off of where we need to be. And that's not on an isolated basis. That's not, a 20-minute spell in a game where we might be great, or a half where we might be great. This Boro team is still miles off being anywhere near consistently good enough, week in, week out, game in, game out, from one game to another, to be anywhere near the top 6. The gap's 5 points now, and quite honestly, I think Stoke and Derby came at the perfect time, really, to just keep things as they were, maybe delay the inevitable, because Boro reverted exactly right back to where we've been today in a performance that was absolutely disgraceful, to be honest with you. And I feel so bad for the 1,000 or however many Boro fans it were that travelled all the way down to Swansea. It's a 6-7 hour drive there, another 6-7 hour drive back. Some have dedicated their entire weekends to staying over and spending a day or two down in Swansea to watch, and they've came away with a performance that was so far off it. It is not good enough, and it is, as I say, disgraceful, really, for the travelling fans who had to go and watch that today. It was lifeless. It was so unimaginative. It was terrible, really, quite honestly. I don't have the adjectives to describe how bad it was, and I think the fact that Swansea themselves were miles off it, that's only a damning indictment of how bad we were, because it really was a stark reminder as to the worst of this Boro team. We've talked so often this season about how, this team can have a really high ceiling, and when they're really good, they're fantastic, but by God, this team has a very low floor. When things don't click, and when things are bad, they are truly, truly bad. And I mentioned in a video I did on the channel a couple of days ago that the 4 games between this one and the Oxford game just after the international break were all must-wins to really give us a chance. This was arguably the toughest one of the lot, you could say, but still not the start you want to have at a run like this. And now you've got to look at the next 3 games and say that they're all absolute must-wins if Boro are to keep any playoff hopes alive. But quite honestly, with the way we've played, taking out the last 2 games where we were alright against really poor sides, if this Boro team, playing as bad as they are, gets into the playoffs, then to be honest, it's absolutely criminal, because at the minute we look so far off it. It's terrible. It really, really is. So let's start with the lineup then, because it was pretty much the only lineup I think we could have fielded, to be honest with you. I think it was the lineup I predicted in my preview. Travers in goal. The back four had to be the only back four that we could field, with Borges starting this game where he finished the last alongside Dale Fry in the centre of defence, with Giles coming in at left back. Hackney and Morris remained in midfield with the same attacking four that actually had served Boro really well in recent games. Couldn't have been further from in this game. It is stark how Boro can go from Jekyll and Hyde one week to the next. But it was one of the only teams we could have fielded down to Boro's injuries in defence and lack of real options in attack, with so many of the players we've brought in just looking like they don't fit whatsoever. And it's crazy that we went from a team, an 11 that looked okay, looked better in the last two, to one that looked like they'd never played together in this game, because the first half has to go down as one of the worst halves of football I've seen this season. It's hard to say that because we've had so many. That's what makes this an even worse statement to say. It's hard to truly say this is the worst half of the season, because we've had that many bad halves of football and bad games over the last month or two. But I honestly believe it was right up there. We didn't lay a single glove on Swansea at all in the first half. We were so sloppy, it really was unbelievable. I can't recall us stringing 2 or 3 consecutive passes together at all. The front four looked like they'd never seen each other before, never mind played football together before. And the ironic thing was, of all the areas of the pitch that looked remotely solid, was the back four. A makeshift back four littered with defensive injuries. That was the only part of the team that looked remotely solid. And maybe that's down to the fact that Swansea weren't great going forwards either. But my word, the rest of the team that I thought was a guaranteed win for Boro, a guaranteed shining light in recent performances as well, was what let us down massively. And Swansea, to be fair, for as poor as they were, and I'm sure they will be delighted with the victory, but their performance wasn't great at all, they did get one thing spot on, and that was their press. They pressed Boro so hard in that first half, and we simply had no answers. They swarmed and surrounded and pressed Hackney and Morris like crazy, and both of them couldn't deal with it. The number of times Hackney and Morris played heavy touches, gave the ball away, played it into dangerous areas, had passes intercepted. It was incredible how frequently it was happening and how quickly Boro were turning the ball over time and time again. We were so bad in possession in the first half, but that wasn't just down to us being poor. And don't get me wrong, there were times where we were poor, our decision making at times, and some of our passing was bad, but Swansea made it bad by pressing us really, really hard. They took our midfield 2 out the game, and it had such a huge impact on Boro's play, because we simply couldn't play through the thirds at that point. It took our only strength out of the game completely. And when our midfield can't dictate play, you're hoping then, well, maybe Boro can stretch that Swansea team out with width, maybe get in behind with pace. But exactly like we were saying only a few weeks ago, Boro don't have width. We don't have pace in behind. Everything was coming central. So all they had to do was stick compact, block out them passing lanes, stay central, defend them central areas, and they basically cut out all of Boro's play, because Force wasn't having any joy down the right. Whittaker had an absolutely dreadful day at the office. I've got to say, nothing come off for him at all. He was wanting to come central. Azaz was already central, so Swansea just blocked out and congested the central areas. And that made sure that Hackney and Morris couldn't dictate. Azaz barely didn't do anything in this game. Whittaker kept coming inside and was just running into bodies. And without that width, without us stretching Swansea from one side to the other and making the pitch really, really big, and without us having any runners in behind to have them turning around and running towards their own goal, it was so easy for Swansea. They just kept doing what they were doing. Boro just kept playing it in their hands. We just kept trying to do the same things, and as we've said many times in the Carrick, this team, playing the same way, doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results. It is the definition of insanity. And we just kept trying to do the same things. Swansea kept doing the same things, and it led to them continually winning the ball back and having shots, attempts on goal. And let's be honest, if they were, even remotely decent today, they'd have put 2 or 3 past Boro. It doesn't dress it up any better that the score was only 1-0. Borges made a goal-saving tackle at one point in the game, which was, it prevented a certain second goal for Swansea in the second half. Travers pulled off another 2 or 3 saves to keep the scoreline down. It was exactly like it was in games gone by, without the goalkeeper and maybe without the opposition being better. Boro could have really been well beaten today, and it's all down to just throughout the team, top to bottom, really, really poor. And as I say, Swansea weren't better. They weren't great at all, but they pressed us well, and I guess they pulled out the one moment of quality in the entire game, and that was on the 26th minute, and shock, it came from Boro giving the ball away. Whittaker tried to play a ball in from the right-hand side. It was an awkward pass into Tommy Conway, an awkward bounce read really well by Harry Darling, who headed it down, and all of a sudden, bang, Boro in trouble. Eon picks the ball up on the turnover, has the midfield to run into, gets a free shot from outside the area, and it's a beautifully curled finish into the back of the net. And to be honest with you, barring other opportunities, they did force a few decent shots and saves out of Mark Travers. I wouldn't say they ever had anything massively clear-cut. Second half, that's when they did. As I say, Borges blocked. It might be Neom again, actually, who had the ball crossed back into the box. The shot was it was goal bound. It was going in without a shadow of a doubt. It was a great block from Neto Borges. Boro didn't lay a single glove, not a single shot on target in that first half. It was, as I say, I know it's easier to say this in Boro's recent run and saying this straight after the game, but I don't think I'm too far off it when I say it was one of the worst first half performances I think we've seen, and that is including the recent run we've been on. It was that bad, and it said a lot about how bad it was that Michael Carrick made not 1 but 2 changes at half-time. I don't recall the last time Michael Carrick ever made 2 changes at half-time. He made 1 at half-time in the home game against Watford, I think, at the Riverside a few weeks ago, when it honestly felt like it was do or die at that point. But he made 2 here, and I'm going to be honest, this is no disrespect to Willing Jr., no disrespect to Iheanacho, but when I saw them both coming on at half-time, there wasn't one part of me that felt all that enthused or encouraged by either of them coming on, because neither of them have, quite honestly, done all that much in a Boro shirt, to be honest. And I think that tells you all that you need to know about Boro's January incomings and the options we have coming off the bench at this moment in time. It didn't help that we didn't really change the system. I thought maybe we might have went to 3 at the back and played Illing Jr. as more of a wing back, but wasn't the case. We stuck with the same 4-2-3-1 with Illing Jr. replacing Giles as a left back and Iheanacho coming on. It was Marcus Forss, I think. So Iheanacho come on and played in and around as a roaming 10, and it felt exactly like the Boro team that we were seeing against Bristol City, with Iheanacho up front, Illing Jr. shoehorned in on one of the sides. It just looked incredibly disjointed, and the changes didn't really have their desired effect at all, to be honest with you. It was more of the same, a change of personnel, but nothing really in the game changed at all. He did make another change on the 69th minute with Bergzorg coming on. That was the only change that I think had a positive impact, because Bergzorg gave us something that we didn't have throughout the entire game and something we needed, and that was pace. That was someone running in behind, someone giving the Swansea defence something to worry about. And lo and behold, straight after Bergzorg come on, he had the desired effect, and he gave their defence something to worry about, because he latched onto a ball forward, got in behind, he was physical, he was strong, he used his pace to get up the pitch, played into Conway, whose shot was saved by Vigoro, who made his one and only save of the game after having one of the easiest afternoons I think he'll have all season. So Bergzorg come on and made a positive impact, replacing Whittaker, who, well, as much as I thought he was making positive strides in recent weeks, he was really, really poor today. But that was it. That was our only shot on target. And to make things worse, we made another change on the 79th minute, because Boro and our one and only centre-half, who is fit, went off injured. That's right. In January, you all remember us all saying it. I said it, Chris said it, loads of fans had said it, that Boro were missing a big, big trick, not replacing Matt Clark as a centre-half in January. Yep, Clark wanted to leave, and I have no gripes with Boro letting him go, but we didn't replace him, and we left ourselves with only 3 fit centre-halves. And I remember saying in transfer review videos, podcasts. It was a risk, especially when Boro's defence was already incredibly shaky. And I remember saying, if we lose one or two of them defenders, because Rav's injury record's poor, Fry's injury record's not great, you're then having to bring Ayling in, you're having to bring other players in, which then leaves us light at full-back, to which we were already light anyway. All of them premonitions have pretty much come to pass, because Edmondson, as we know, already out for a number of weeks. Rav, as we know, injury record poor, out for a number of weeks again. That brought Ayling in to centre-half, leaving us with only Dijksteel at right-back. Ayling's out, injured as well, meaning we then had to bring Borges into the centre of defence, meaning our only two fit left-backs now have to start alongside one another. Dale Fry is now injured as well, meaning Johnny Howson is having to come back in and play at centre-half. So we only have one midfielder now to cover the two centre midfielders. We don't have any depth behind Dijksteel at right-back, pretty much. And if we don't want to play Giles at left-back, we're having to play Ayling Jr. there. It is a shambles. It is an absolute shambles. And don't get me wrong, it's a debate we've been talking about for years now. Is it unlucky? Is it down to training, conditioning, recovery, whatever? But Boro's injury record has been appalling for so long now, and it just continues to get worse and worse. And I know with the stress on players, with the number of games they have to play and the sheer physicality of the game right now, all teams are suffering from injuries, but I cannot quite believe the level of injuries that Boro are suffering right now. And the defence was left exposed, Carrick said when questioned in an interview after Matt Clark was let go. Is there an issue with us not bringing a replacement in? His words were,
"Would centre-back be somewhere you look to strengthen?"
No, we'll be all right.
And then words have well and truly come back to haunt him and the recruitment team, because we are not all right. We finished the game with a back four of Dijksteel, Howson, Borges and Ayling Jr. The most mismatch back four I think I've ever seen. And that was the best part of the game. That was the most solid part of the entire 11 was the back four. Oh, Jesus Christ, what a shambles. What a shambles we are. That's how the game finished, 1-0 to Swansea. They managed the game towards the end. Again, they weren't put under any significant pressure. Despite the changes, Boro never looked like laying a glove. I think maybe the final 15 minutes we started stringing a few decent moves together, but what's the point in doing that 75 minutes in? We were absolutely awful for the majority of the game, and although Swansea weren't great either, they were the side who deserved the victory, even though it was narrow. They maybe should have had more. Boro deserved nothing from this game at all. The only people deserving of anything with the poor fans in the away end, who quite honestly deserve a refund after the performance they just witnessed today. Stats tell you all you need to know. Boro had plenty of the ball, but did barely anything with it. A really low XG of 0.38. Swansea's was just over 1, which fairly equates to the scoreline in the end. Boro only one shot on target from 9 on goal. Absolutely terrible, and you can see the pass accuracy from both sides. I mean, Swansea's wasn't great, 75%. Boro's 85%. Not great either. But we've said, haven't we, in recent games, and we said this even when Boro had just beaten Derby and Stoke, our one big positive that we have to have working, we have to have clicking, is our attack, because we're always susceptible of giving a goal away. But when our attack works, we're all right. But when it doesn't, we've got nothing to show for it, really. We've got nothing out there on the pitch, and today our attack was completely just disjointed. It didn't work. It looked like they never played together before, and our key players just weren't on it. And it's worrying how easily Boro's best weapons and our strongest parts of our team, how easily we are to basically be beaten, and how easy it is to take them positives out of the game, and it leaves Boro completely blunt and without any sort of threat going forward whatsoever. You take out them key components and you basically find a way of completely beating Boro, and it's worrying how easy it is. And it comes back to Boro being able to win in different ways, bringing on players who can make a difference. It's quite easy. Once them key attacking players are taken out of the game, Boro have nothing going forward, really. And that was shown here today. Moving on to the lineup, I don't really want to delve too deep on it, really, because there weren't really any good players or good performances at all. I thought the back four, as I say, did all right, given the fact that it was a mismatch thrown together back four. Travers, as he has done in numerous games of late, kept the scoreline down with some decent saves. I thought Neto Borges, again, given the fact he was playing out of position, did really well at centre-half, made one big goal-saving tackle and block, as I say, in the second half. Rest of the back four, meh, did okay. Dale Fry, of course, off injured. Sums us up, really. I thought the midfield two were really poor, pressed really hard by Swansea into making mistake after mistake, and neither of them come out with any credit, really, from today and their performance. And I don't think any of the attacking four did either. Whittaker, maybe his worst performance in a Boro shirt so far. Azaz went back to being fairly anonymous again. Take him out the game. It really does take away Boro's main attacking threat, and that was shown again today. Force didn't really have an impact on the game. Conway didn't really do anything either, other than the shot he had on goal, and barring Delano Bergsorg, none of the substitutes did either. So that leaves us now back to, I guess, where we were. One step forward, maybe two steps back. Boro are now 5 points adrift of West Brom, 6 adrift of Coventry. This is a Coventry team who've won 9 in 10 and just quite frankly look unstoppable at this moment in time. And it does beg the question, yes, it's 5 points. Yes, it doesn't seem all that much, but with 10 games to go, for Boro to not only close that gap, but then pull out a gap of our own and feel comfortable going into the final few games of the season, what are we going to have to do? Win 6 of them final 10? 7 of them final 10? That's, you say, oh, it's only 5 points, but that's taking in the assumption that West Brom are going to lose every game between now and the season. Coventry are going to lose every game between now and the season. They all look like they're going to pick up more points than they won't. West Brom are unbeaten in 4 with 2 wins. Coventry 9 wins in 10. Bristol City have won 3 of their last 5. Boro need to not only maintain pace with the teams above us, we need to somehow get ahead of them. And I just don't see how that's going to happen at the moment. We've beat Derby and Stoke. Whoop-de-doo. They were both dreadful. First half-decent side we've come up against who weren't even all that great beat us today. It's very hard to see Boro not only close that gap with the teams above us dropping enough points, and Boro also getting in a position where we're going into them final 7 games with Leeds coming up, Millwall away, Chef Wed away, Coventry away on the final day of the season. It's not hard to start to now really believe that it's not just a point of now or never for Boro, because mathematically it isn't. But it's really hard to see a route, between all the games to which Boro find their way into the top 6. And quite honestly, if we were, it would be a damning indictment on the teams between us and the top 6 and the teams already occupying the top 6. It would be a damning indictment on Coventry, West Brom, Bristol City and Blackburn if this Boro team in its current predicament was to get anywhere near the top 6, was to not only catch these teams but overthrow them. It would take something truly miraculous with the injuries we've got at the back, the form they are in, the turnaround in look and form that Boro would need is already looking quite astounding. So I said this in the video I did the other day. I will reiterate it once again. Boro have 3 games coming up. QPR, Luton, Oxford. 9 points is a minimum. Nothing less. There's no excuses. Boro have, well, the room for error went a long time ago. We've now got no ground to lose. We cannot fall any further behind. We have to beat QPR on Tuesday. We have to win at Luton next weekend. We then have to come back from the international break and beat Oxford. It's as simple as that. We have to win all 9 of the next 9 available, because maybe then that will claw us back within touching distance. That might have us somewhere near the top 6. We might be back level with them sides, but again, we're relying on them dropping points as well, because that might give us a slight glimmer going into the final 7, which, as I've documented on the channel, are so much more difficult. Blackburn away, never get much there. Leeds at home, the best team by a mile in the league. Millwall away, Chef Wed away, Norwich at home, Coventry away. It's unbelievable how tough that run of games is looking. Boro need to bank some form of points in the next 3. Otherwise, the brutal honest fact is the chances of us winning enough of them games in the final 7 to get back in there is looking very, very unlikely. So I do feel like Boro are at a point now where the season is do or die. We need to win the next 3. Do we look like doing it after the last performance today? Not at all. We're going to have to do something we've only done on one occasion this season. that's win the next 3. It's as simple as that. It does feel like Groundhog Day once again with Boro. It really does. And I find myself going back to where I was, wanting a big fat enter sim button in front of me so I can press it and get to the end of this season, because every time Boro give you a glimmer of hope where you think maybe they're coming back to life and maybe there is some life left in this season, they pull away the defibrillator, get a knife and stab you right back in the heart again and put you right back in this slump, to be honest with you. So I'll be back in the next day or two to preview the QPR game at home on Tuesday night. A must win, no doubt about it, not just because of where we are, but because we're at home as well. For the whole atmosphere, I think we could go right back to where we were against Watford, that sort of level of toxicity, if we were to fail to beat QPR and, God forbid, lose on Tuesday night. So I'll be back to preview that game between now and then. But until next time, guys, if you've enjoyed the video, do hit a like on the video and subscribe for more. As I say, we preview and review every Boro game here on the channel. Leave me a comment below whether you're a Boro fan, Swansea fan or neutral in the comment section below. And if you'd rather listen to these on the go, you can find links in the description to each podcast provider where you can listen to episodes of Project Boro if you would rather do so. But until next time, guys, Boro revert back to type and drop in another one of their worst performances of the season to join another round of worst performances. It really does just continue to go round in that never-ending cycle that somehow hasn't led to me losing my hair yet. I'll see you all in the next one.